Hey there, folks, and welcome to Seabed. Seabed is a Yuri psychological mystery visual novel that has made quite a name for itself online. If you look up the online discourse about this game, you'll find words like masterpiece being thrown around. I only have a small amount of experience with the game. I've not passed the prologue yet, uh, but I'd like to sort of chronicle my experience with it as we go along. Um, A little bit about myself. My name is Volp. Um, I'm British. I have a kind of crappy microphone and a kind of crappy voice. Um, I suck at talking, but I do like to examine the text and sort of puzzle things out. I don't promise to be any good at it. I have no formal training in literary criticism, and I am colossally stupid. But if you're prepared to put up with me, I'd like to be your guide on this long walk across the bottom of the ocean. Let's start. The light from the round moon broke into countless rays, wavering as it drew back. And so, right off the bat, in this kind of text, it's usually a good idea to take note of the first line. And the last line, obviously, but the first line often sets the tone and introduces some elements of the thematics that are going to be at play throughout the rest of the text. Obviously, here we have the round moon. The moon, we're already being sort of inundated with ocean themes, even this early. The moon is, of course, connected to the tidal flows, is connected to the ocean in terms of mythology and symbology anyway. And wavering, of course, has the word wave hidden inside of it. So we're already being kind of hit with the thematic ocean, and this is something which, in my limited experience of the game, is very consistent. You'll notice a lot of the time that I point out very aquatic words, very words which contribute to the idea of the sea environment. So pay attention for that as we go on. My head felt empty, as though I was submerged in water. Obviously, don't need to comment on that one. But we do have of course, it kind of reminds me of Florence and the Machine, where the lead singer, I believe, once had a near drowning experience that shaped her creatively for the rest of her career. Um, Thus far, anyway, I don't believe she's dead or has stopped making music. Uh, the submerged in water is very interesting. We might want to look for drowning animals as we go on. My eyelids felt exceedingly heavy, and so did my entire body, languidly sinking into the bed. See, again, we have this heaviness, this sinking. All of this is very thematically cohesive. We're pulling together a narrative image, based not just on text but also on the subtext of the words we're using. Even in the darkness, I could tell Sachiko, my childhood friend, was right there next to me. I'd known her for 23 years. I was 28 now, which meant I first met her when I was 5. So, it might be an interesting point. So I've read some limited Steam reviews, read the Steam page. You'll find very quickly that various characters have their memories are a point of issue for them. So we're having a character trace back, like, in terms of logic rather than intuitive knowledge. I was 28 now, which meant I first met her when I was 5, which is, it's less like you're saying it to someone else and more like she's saying it to herself to remind herself of the details. But given that context, which might be spoilers, but again, it's on the Steam page, we might be wise to treat this as an unreliable narrator. So we are Takako. My family moved that year. Our house was only a 30-minute drive down the mountain from the old place, with a large supermarket behind it. There were no shops around where the kids could spend their allowance, save for the occasional moving store. Back in the day, I thought of my new place as a huge city, but that was far from the truth. We had few buildings that exceeded 5 stories, and you could see both the edges of our town as well as the factory at the sea from the northern mountains. So again, we are in close proximity to the sea, which is, continue to experience ocean metaphors and ocean theming here. But we also have almost the feeling of a moving into a place you think is very large but which isn't. You almost have a analog to the big fish in a small pond metaphor, where someone who believed they were a big deal in their old location or believed that their old location was very large, then grows up and finds that it is not so large and that it cannot contain them. But the fact that there were fewer rice fields and more buildings compared to where I came from made it seem like a bustling city to my child's mind. On the day we moved, my mother drove back and forth between the city and the country many times. I got into the back seat of the car with the last of our luggage. Initially, we took the same road we did to reach my kindergarten, but once we had passed it, the roads turned fresh and alien. And seeing how we kept driving along the river, I somehow thought that perhaps I could make it back to the countryside on foot. So again, we have the close proximity of water. Probably the river is a tributary to the sea. But this is also very clear recollection from a childhood memory, especially for someone who is 28. Like, personally speaking, I have a few very sort of clear memories from my childhood, but nothing that I could enunciate in so many words. Like, you tend to remember more flashes of things, in my experience, although maybe I'm just extremely amnesic. Not that it mattered. As I lost myself in thought, I barely even noticed when we reached our destination. As our car blasted the few unfortunate pebbles off the parking lot, my mother told me that we had arrived. The parking lot was positioned right in front of our new home, its white lines, denoting where the car should stand, curiously slanted. So I feel like this might be an interesting, little metaphor, because we have this image of orderly lines where the cars should stand, like underlined should. But these ones are slanted, so they're kind of crosswise. So that makes me think that this is hinting that the person, Takako, is being sort of represented by this. She's sort of crosswise to where society would normally expect her to stand, maybe. Although, wild mass guessing. Glancing out the rear window of the car, I spotted a red 4-story apartment building. Back then, my child's mind failed to comprehend why anybody would want to draw those lines slanted. Now that I think about it, it was probably to make it easier to park cars driving in reverse gear. So again, we're contrasting the clarity of logic between an adult mind and how an adult thinks about things as compared to the way that a child thinks about things. But the recollection of how a child thinks about things is curiously fresh. However, I moved from that apartment before I could get my own car, so I never had the chance to test if it was worth sacrificing 1 or 2 potential parking spaces for a bit of extra comfort. "That's our new home," said my mother. "Are you still sulking over it?" She let out a sigh as I focused my attention on the view outside, refusing to look her in the eye. "You'll make new friends here right away." What have I done? Look how many houses there are. Plenty of children living here, I'm sure. There's a park behind the building. You can go take a look. My mother turned the ignition key to stop the engine and got out of the car. She then opened the door on the opposite side of me and began unloading our bags. I suddenly noticed a small girl walking in front of our new house. She was carrying a red bucket and a trowel, which, so immediately you will think like red bucket, trowel. For some people this will bring to mind sandlots, but it also brings to mind the beach, the seaside. So this is again playing into the water imagery just a little bit. She circled around the building, disappearing behind it. As I got out of the car and started running after her, I heard my mother's voice from behind. "Hey, Takako, where are you going?" "I'll go look at that park." And this is the prologue. The Clover Design Office is the heading, I guess. I saw her jet black locks flicker through the slits of my half-closed eyelids. So one thing that you're going to notice about this visual novel as we go onwards is that the sound is very often used in a very dramatic way. So, for example, this music that you're hearing right now is quite distorted, almost as though you're hearing it from the bottom of a pool or something, like there's water in your ears. Obviously, you've got the ticking of the clock that provides a kind of metronome. Sachiko turned to me as I extended my hand, her long black hair swaying in the air. She gave me her hand in response. I could feel moist warmth from her palm. Again, moist, it's more water imagery. Even without looking, I could feel her familiar, slender fingers intertwining with mine. As I absent-mindedly gazed at her, she parted her lips. "What are you thinking?" I tried to remember when we last held hands like this. As I did, the memories of how we went to a festival came flooding into my mind. So again, this is more doubling down on the thematics and the imagery we've already discussed. Flooding, more water imagery, memories being mentioned, they're recalling things. So a while back, this is not the first time I've attempted to cover this game. I've mostly forgotten what I did the first time, but originally it was in a series of articles that just got to be too much work for me to make the product that I wanted to make. But I remember comparing Sachiko here, who is, let's see, can I hide text? Yes. I remember comparing Sachiko here, the way she's positioned, the outline of her leg under the covers, sort of brings to mind mermaids, especially with the long hair. Like, you can kind of see that imagery soaking in, I guess. Like that sort of iconic picture of a mermaid on a rock. I think there's a statue that kind of looks like this. I vaguely remember bringing it up, but I've tried not to remind myself too much of what I wrote in the past, just so I can look freshly at this as we continue. Which festival? The one we went to back in kindergarten? Or was it elementary school? The same one where we got all those goldfish. So, again, we have this kind of, the one we went to back in kindergarten, or was it elementary school? So we're already questioning things, we're already questioning our recollections. The idea that this memory is a wavering, sort of unreliable thing. You could almost compare it to, again, the surface of the ocean. It moves back and forth, it shimmers, it's never 100% reliable or accurate. But we're already introducing the idea that the memories we go through are going to be flawed in some way. I'm pretty sure that wasn't the last time we held hands. Again, questioning each other's recollections. Do you remember how many fish we got? Was it 20 or so? It didn't go that high. I think it was either 18 or 19. When I came back after looking around some other shops, I found your bowl so full of fish they could barely fit in anymore. You bought me a caramel apple back then, right? Did I? Honestly, I was more shocked by how eager you were to keep on catching goldfish despite your scooping paper already being in shambles. So again, this is more doubling down on the themes of they're consistently questioning each other on what they remember. And here we have, you bought me a caramel apple back then, right? You have this, I believe it's Takako speaking here. One thing you're going to find is that due to the ADV, I believe it's ADV? Or is it? There are two main styles of visual novel, one of which is ADV and the other one of which I don't remember the name of as of this moment. But it's the one that Higurashi uses, where it's this largely text-based, as opposed to a text box at the bottom of the screen and then character sprites moving around as the dialogue progresses. But because of the particular style of this, it's sometimes difficult to tell who's talking, and I believe that to be a somewhat intentional decision because of how the story is laid out, and because of other like Japanese media which has that kind of uncertainty effect. The one I always think of is the Haruhi Suzumiya light novels, where quite often Kon is it's difficult to tell whether he's thinking or speaking out loud, and there's always that kind of blurred boundary, which I believe is intentional in this case. I was waiting for it to dry up. Does that actually work? I mean, it'll just get wet the moment you stick it back into the water. Sounds like a waste of time to me. So what this kind of suggests to me, like reading into it a bit more, is like almost, I want to say, a recovery like analog. Like, does that actually work? I mean, it'll just get wet the moment you stick it back into the water. If we apply this to a person, does it, if you're like waiting to recover, but then like say you've got a broken arm, if you wait for your arm to recover but then it breaks the moment you do something strenuous with it, sounds like a waste of time to me. It's this kind of almost disposable aspect that I'm picking up on here. I don't know if that's particularly relevant, however. Patience is exactly what you need to win that game. She considered the space above me for a second. Something wrong? You said it was around 20, but I'm pretty sure we only brought one bag with us on our way back. You're only allowed to take up to 3 with you. Oh, well, that really was a waste of time then. But I could choose the cutest and most energetic ones. Good for you. So, I think it's a bit too early to be reading too far into Sachiko's character, but she seems to be kind of almost relaxed, but also what's the word I'm looking for? Nonchalant? Something like that. It's some synonym of that. I apologise. I'm very bad at speaking. But yeah, she kind of has that flippant air to her sometimes, where even though it was something that Takako seemed to value at the time, in present day she doesn't think it's particularly worthy or notable. One lived for quite a long time. I still remember having it around the time I got into middle school. Ah, was it that black one with a long tail? Yeah, it lived for so long I even gave it a name. Was it Belle or something? Was it? Didn't you say it reminded you of a temple's bell? Ah, don't me. Oh yeah, I remember there always being one goldfish in the water tank, but then it disappeared right alongside the tank itself. Did it get sick? I think it was mold or something. One day I realised that it had some sort of weed growing from its scales. I tried plucking it out, but... Sachiko knitted her eyebrows. They grew right back. I think it suffocated in the end. So the story of Belle the goldfish, obviously it's kind of a sad story. Like, pets and animals die. They don't live as long as humans. It's always sad when that happens, but I think it's quite interesting that the fish itself basically drowned. Effectively, like it stopped breathing in the water. But it's that kind of aquatic feeling. But we also have this kind of relating back to what I was talking about earlier. They grew right back. I think it suffocated in the end. And then you have when Sachiko was saying, you know, the even if you let the paper dry, it's just going to break again. This kind of feeling of recovery not being quite possible. I think that's very interesting. I think that's very telling for what we might be experiencing as the story goes on. This idea that even if you wait, it's not necessarily going to get better. Even if you, like, recover a bit, you're still going to break down. Is that really mold? I found a book about goldfish diseases sometime later. It said that the weed doesn't grow on a live fish, but in the case of goldfish, it can grow on the mold that gets stuck between its scales. The book even explained how to fix it. Would have been nice if you found that book earlier. Yeah. I closed my eyes and listened to the silence, but it was so overwhelming, I ended up opening my mouth again. So again, to re-examine that, we have the idea of this idea of being able to fix something, being able to save something, if only you knew at the time, of realizing in hindsight what the correct option would have been. And I think we've all had that experience probably where it's kind of like, oh, I wish I'd known this, I wish I'd known that. But the result that you got at the time is kind of unrectifiable. You can't really apologise, you can't really take it back. It's just, you didn't have the correct information at the time. And so even though the possibility for a better circumstance was there, you were unable to take it. You think that goldfish resented its master for being unable to cure even a simple disease like that? I don't know. What do you think? I don't know either. I loved that goldfish though. I haven't kept another fish since. I liked how elegant it looked as it swam with its long tail behind it. So again, we have this idea of the goldfish resenting its master, being unable to, like this idea of assuming guilt, even when, like, at that moment in time, there was nothing you could have done to sort of prepare yourself for it. But something that's occurring to me as I read this, how elegant it looks. It swam with its long tail behind it. Previously. So where are we at? Long slender fingers, long black hair, long slender fingers. Like, I feel like this goldfish bell is perhaps an analog for Sachiko, maybe, because it's got this the black tail that we had. There's some kind of morphic resonance maybe between Sachiko, the girl sitting in front of us, and this fish from Takako's childhood. Because Sachiko does look kind of like the elegant type. When I got it at the festival, it wasn't that long, you know, but then it grew really fast. It was always different from the others. I see. The usual spasm woke me up. We'll call it there for this first video. But I hope you're interested in what we're going through. We'll deal with the TV static and the spasming later as we go. But thank you very much for watching. I've been Volp, and this is Seabed. I hope you'll come along for the ride with me.